This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So the preseason's over. The Browns have done their 53-man roster cuts. They've even added guys on waivers. They brought guys back that they originally cut. And the roster is set. All is said and done with the preseason. We are now moving into the regular season. And since we're moving into the regular season, I want to take one last look at the preseason and talk about the winners and the losers of the entire preseason. So let's just jump into it. We're going to start with the first winner, and that's the defensive line. No collective group on this team. Maybe a quarterback gave it a good run, right? I'm not going to lie. Quarterback gave it a good run, but no collective group on this team made you feel more comfortable about the season and more excited about the upgrades that we made in specific areas, the Browns made in specific areas, than the defensive line. I think almost everybody who watched the preseason would agree with me on that the preseason performance of the starting defensive line was significant. Now, again, does that automatically translate into guaranteed regular season success? No. Preseason success does not guarantee regular season success, but what it does is give you a barometer. And what we know is that last year, even in the preseason, the defensive line looked nothing like that, especially if Myles Garrett was not playing. At any point in time, that defensive line never looked like that. So that is telling me, even if we're just judging it on this scale of the preseason, that this defensive line is significantly better, noticeably better. Now, I've been one to pump the brakes a little bit on the defensive hype train, right? I see people go and say, hey, top 5 defense guarantee, top 5 defensive line, these things. And it's just hard for me to get the image of how bad they were last year and that they could make this massive jump to top 5. But the defensive line and their performance throughout camp, and it's not just one preseason game we're talking about, right? We're talking about when the starters went up against the Commanders, they looked really good. We're talking about the joint practice setting. One of the most definitive things to come out of joint practice was that the Browns defensive line looked like the real deal. Jason Kelce said that's one of the best defensive lines you'll play. And then the third preseason game against Kansas City, the defensive line lived up to the hype there as well. That is a good reason to believe that this defensive line is going to be much better. That is why collectively they are winners. But you know who's the biggest winner in the defensive line room? Myles Garrett, because it's looked like that and largely without Myles Garrett there. Now, Myles Garrett did practice in the joint practice against Philadelphia, and he looked excellent. Here's how excellent Myles Garrett has looked in camp. I think we've glossed over how excellent Myles Garrett and how much different Myles Garrett has looked this year than other years. But remember, a beat reporter from the Philadelphia Eagles said they would take Myles Garrett over Nick Bosa in half a heartbeat. That tells you the level of football that Myles Garrett's playing, because Nick Bosa is not just a good player. He's one of the best players in football. But Myles Garrett has been looking that damn good. Made a fool of every tackle that tried to touch him all summer. Now, Myles has had spectacular cancer before. Myles Garrett's always been an alien. He's always been a freak. But it looks like there's a level of focus and intensity with him this year that wasn't with him in years past. And if Myles Garrett can just put together one full season free of what I'm just going to call the bullshit, right? Because unfortunately with Myles, that's been what's derailed him from greatness, is the bullshit. Sometimes the bullshit's his fault. Sometimes the bullshit's not his fault, right? We can go all the way back to 2019, right? 2019, Mason Rudolph fight. He had 10 sacks in 10 games. He probably gets to 16 if he doesn't get suspended, but he smacks Mason Rudolph in the head. Whether he was fairly provoked or not, it's some bullshit that happened, right? Then we get to the 2020 season. Well, COVID happened. We all know that was some BS. 2021, he was kind of BS free. He had Jadeveon Clowney. He had a good like they were all right. They were fine there. The secondary was awful, but they were fine there in 2021. 2022, though, what happened? He flips a Porsche. That's all his fault, right? If Myles Garrett can put together a focused season and he looks better than he's ever have, if he can find a way to stay on the field all season, the ceiling is the roof with Myles Garrett. And what I mean by that is the ceiling is the sack record, if that's even enough to hold him down. And this is the first time that Myles Garrett is going to have significant help on that defensive line. We're not just talking about, oh man, we got Olivier Vernon there finally, or we got Jadeveon Clowney, right? We've been throwing Myles Garrett scraps, quite frankly, on the defensive line, right? Maybe we get one or two guys to add there, say, hey, Myles, we got you some help, right? Oh, we grabbed some Sheldon Richardson and we picked up, Olivier Vernon leftovers in this Giants trade, and that's who you gonna have. And that was one of the best scenarios for him, right? You could go back to 2021 where they just threw Jadeveon Clowney out there and said, here. This is a much different situation. It's not just Zadarius Smith. It's not just Obo. It's not just Dalvin Tomlinson. It's not just Shelby Harris. Like, there's been a concerted effort to add a ton of guys. And now, for the first time in Myles Garrett's career, he has a competent defensive coordinator who knows what to do with a dude like Myles Garrett. And on top of that, he has competent help. Better than competent help. Really good help. If all these guys stay healthy, this defensive line could be spectacular. Another winner, Martin Emerson, thought he had a very strong camp. Cedric Tillman, another guy who I thought had a strong camp. We're probably going to see more of Cedric Tillman than I think a lot of people are assuming right now, because one, he just fits a skill set that we don't have. Right now, the only guy close to him is Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Cedric Tillman is everything you want Donovan Peoples-Jones to be. Not to say that Donovan Peoples-Jones doesn't have his own positive traits. He definitely does. But the one thing you want from Donovan Peoples-Jones, or the two things you want from Donovan Peoples-Jones, is you want him to be more explosive and you want him to be more of a 50-50 ball guy, right? Those are the two things that we've been wanting from him for a while that he just hasn't been able to give us on a consistent basis. That's what Cedric Tillman's skill set is. So if he can give you that, then there's going to be room for him to make a lot of plays here. Another guy who's a winner in the preseason so far, or not so far in the preseason period, is Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore is a winner in the preseason because we have seen just how important he's going to be, right? Because I was worried that this was one of those things where we were going to overhype and overstate this guy's use in the offense. And then training camp rolled around. It's like, oh, no, they're going to use him in like a billion different ways. And he seems to be up to the task. Again, you want him to stay healthy, all of these things, health permitted. I hope health for all 32 teams, all that. But you want Elijah Moore to stay healthy. And if he does, he's going to be an important part of this offense. And I think that's going to be one of the Browns' hopes for this season is Elijah Moore blossoming. Another guy who was a winner, DTR. I mean, do I even got to say it? The man came in as a questionable 5th round pick. People, including me, including some of your most trusted Browns podcasters, were like, why do we do this? Scratching our heads at the pick. Nobody's scratching their head anymore. He's the second quarterback. He's the backup. This has made that pick already be a hit. right? I don't care if DTR never starts for this team. The fact that he was able to get the backup job, the fact that you were able to get a 5th round pick back for Josh Dobbs because of the performance that DTR was giving you, all of those things tell me that that man's had a tremendous camp. So shout out to DTR. Shout out for proving everybody wrong, man. Came in here, took that second team job when nobody thought you could, and really just destroyed the rest of the quarterback room outside of Deshaun Watson. Next winner is Jim Schwartz for many of the same reasons I talked about the defensive line. This defense looks different. Their mentality looks different. Everybody is talking like this team is different. Now, I'm talking about the people on the team are talking like, hey, that's just the change that we needed on the defensive front. That's a very good thing. I'm very encouraged by what I have seen so far defensively, both in coverage and by the defensive line and the linebackers. I feel very encouraged with the job that Jim Schwartz has done so far. And I think Jim Schwartz knows that this is another chance for him to have another signature defense to add under his belt. And maybe he even gets a head coaching job if with another signature defense in a couple of years. Deshaun Watson is another winner. Look, we were all worried, scared to death about Deshaun Watson throughout the whole offseason process, because last year when he didn't have the greatest 6 games in the world, we could at least say, hey, he's going to have a whole offseason next year and he's going to be much better. So there's no reason to worry of whether this trade is going to work or not. But once you get into the actual cycle of that season, and you can no longer say and put it on and put it off like, oh, it's just going to be paying off in the future, then it gets scary, because now you need Deshaun Watson to perform. And it's not because nobody trusts Deshaun Watson to perform. He's a former 3-time Pro Bowler. He was an excellent football player in Houston. He should be an excellent football player in Cleveland. It's Cleveland. We have paranoia about these sort of things because things just sometimes don't work out here for whatever reason. But I think we have seen enough. He dominated mini camps. He dominated training camps. He looked pretty good when he was out there. This looks like Deshaun Watson, man. Like, I think this is what if you watched a lot of Deshaun Watson, or if you've gone back and watched Deshaun Watson in 2019 and 2020, I don't think he looks that different now than he did before. And honestly, I think he looks a little better because he seems to have worked on some of the things that put him high in the sack total in the years past. So Deshaun Watson, definitely a winner. You saw what you needed to see out of him. Nick Chubb is another winner in this thing because we saw how bad the running back position is behind Nick Chubb and what Nick Chubb's been plugging up for the last few years. So shout out to Nick Chubb. And then 2 guys who made the roster, or at least made the team. Ronnie Hickman is a big winner in camp. I don't think anybody expected him to make the team when the preseason started. Got 2 interceptions, played well on some special teams, got his way onto the 53-man roster. And then Austin Watkins is somebody who had a tremendous preseason. No, he did not make the active 53-man roster, but he did make the practice squad. And that's tremendous, man. Like, this is a guy who's been trying to keep his career alive for the last 2 years. He was just in the USFL. So it's tremendous for him to hustle, stay on the team, and who knows, maybe there might be an opportunity for him to contribute, and if he could take advantage of that opportunity, maybe he could change his life. But those are the winners. It's a long list. It's been a good camp. Now let's talk about the losers, and the losers list is pretty short. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we all know that Cade York is probably the biggest loser of the camp, of all camp. Like, I'm not going to put Anthony Schwartz on the loser list because, I mean, we just kind of expected what happened with him to happen, right? Like, was it a surprise to anybody that he didn't make the team? Was it a surprise to anybody that he didn't look good? It would have been more of a surprise if he made that difficult, and he never did. So it is what it is. But Cade York, that was a legitimate surprise. Even I, who sometimes gets criticized by y'all, whether it's fair or not, for being cynical about these kickers, did not expect that Cade York was going to kick himself not out the league. He's still on the team. He's with Tennessee, but was going to kick himself out of brown and orange in the preseason. I didn't imagine it. I really didn't imagine. I thought we were going to do the same thing that we've done with Cade York, where he looks fine in the preseason, looks great in practice, and then you get to the season and he gets the lemon booty. But he probably did us a favor by having all that lemon booty in the preseason. And let's be real about it, man. It was one of the worst individual preseason performances anybody's ever had. Like any position, anywhere. Have you ever seen somebody go from roster lock, we drafted this dude, we think he's incredible, to, oh my God, we gotta trade a 7th round pick so we can get rid of this kicker? Have you ever seen that ever happen to any football player ever? Because of their preseason was that bad. That bad. That's how awful K. York was in the preseason. I don't even know. Was it 7 kicks he missed? I don't even want to bring it up anymore. But yeah, man, K. York had one of the, if not the worst preseason of all time. Because there's guys who have probably had like worse statistical preseasons. Nobody who was a guaranteed starter coming into the preseason. Like nobody's ever lost a locked starting job. You don't even have a backup on the roster. And you lost your job in camp. Think about that. This man's camp was so terrible. He lost his job and there wasn't even a backup on the roster. Like, it's one thing when you lose to the second linebacker on the depth chart in training camp. It's another thing when they got to trade to replace you because you was that terrible in the preseason. I hope he gets the new start somewhere else, and I hope he makes the best of it. But yeah, K. York had a rough one, had one of the roughest preseasons I have ever seen anybody. Like, it's unimaginably rough. Like, I feel like the football gods intervened and decided that K. York does not need to be here anymore. That it's not best for him or us. Like, somebody greater than us, it felt like intervened, because that made no sense how he just went that awful. Like, I haven't seen something like that in sports, period, since like Markelle Fultz forgot how to shoot. Or like Ben Simmons. But even Ben Simmons hasn't gone out the league or like gotten cut by somebody. And even Markelle Fultz turned into a fine player. Like, I ain't never seen nothing like this, man. Like, this was it. What happened? It's incredible. I don't really know what happened there. And then the other losers is Josh Dobbs and Kellen Mond. Nobody thought Josh Dobbs wasn't going to be the backup quarterback coming into the offseason or coming into the preseason. And somehow both these dudes lost their job to DTR. Now, part of it's because DTR was out there straight balling. Don't want to take anything away from DTR. Another part of it is because Josh Dobbs and Kellen Mond were not straight balling, weren't even close to straight balling. We're straight throwing the ball in the dirt. That's what was going on. So, yeah, man, they had to go. Browns replaced Kellen Mond with PJ Walker, shout out XFL, and Josh Dobbs with DTR. DTR cold, man, for doing that. As a cold man. Nobody thought that rookie was going to come in and clear that room like a old Western sharpshooter. Came into that saloon, got rid of the backup at the third string, sitting there at second string. That's crazy. That's crazy, man. That DTR is going to have a future in this league. I don't know where that future is going to be or what the ceiling on his future is going to be. That's a cold man. That's a cold man. But that's my winners and losers of the preseason. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.